While he's bringing that up, this space concept with running apps. So I'm understanding that you can run your kind of appizing all of these different platforms. Can you run multiple apps on an appliance, or is it you can just run one app on a?
Space runs, I mean, on different platforms. It runs under VM as well, right?
It runs on a VM, and we have our own hardware appliance. So you can have option on a hardware appliance as well as on a VM.
Okay, but like, so say I have the hardware appliance and then I want to use this network
Director.
whatever you call it, yeah, network director. Can I also run in the future the security design app at the same time on
Yes.
the appliance? Okay.
Yes, and just to expand on that as well, so it's also not a closed system. So Juno Space also has APIs that we already are working with third-party management solutions as well.
Okay.
And along those same lines, this is coming in as replacing Ethernet design, right?
Yes.
Which runs under Space today. So, you know, you can see we just didn't bring Ringmaster in and move it over here. We're tying it together with existing stuff that we have.
Could I just ask you, the text is a little bit small and hard to see from the back of the room here. If you could
Okay.
make your screen resolution.
Bigger television.
So while we do that, I'll answer your question. You know, the question that you asked about the security design. So this is how the Space UI looks like. This is the main UI, and here are the options, the drop-down options. So here you can pull it like security design or network director, and go to the specific application. So now from Space, I'll be jumping into the network director.
You say single pane of glass a lot, but nobody actually really wants that.
But they want one tool.
Right, you want one tool, but not necessarily all of it on one monitor.
We'd never be able to read the text if we did that.
Now, are you going to get into scaling, licensing, etc.?
I can talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
We could talk a little bit on the licensing on Space, but we're not giving out the licensing and pricing yet on the product tools for this.
But it's per device, per switch, per access point.
The way it manages, but
The licensing.
it
No, I don't care about price. Conceptually, how is it licensed?
so
Per AP.
it's what?
Per AP.
Yeah, per IP.
And then what about switch? Oh, per IP.
No, per AP for wireless and per device for wired or the switches, per switch.
And then how big can a single instance grow
On the wired
and
side,
still work?
I would say around 2,000 devices, and then wireless side around 15,000 APs. That's what we have tested so far.
So that combination?
That's a combination, and then on top of that, again, this solution as such, you can deploy it as a fabric. So I'm talking about a one Juno Space application.
Okay.
If you add one more application or node, it becomes a cluster or fabric. Then the scale kind of increases.
Thank you.
Is it better or? Can we get a screen here?
What's that?
Can we get a screen here?
So, on which platform is this running?
Can you get a screen
What was that
here,
question?
Which platform are you running this on?
Yeah, it's a little weird.
VMware?
What platform are you running this under right now?
Is it
This
the
demo,
appliance?
is it on an ESX or?
This is running on the ASX, yes.
Is it available in appliance as well?
Yes, yes. Okay, so to start with, correct, this is how the first or the main UI looks like. On top, we have these different life cycles: build, deploy, monitor, fault, and reporting. As the name says, build is basically you build your configuration. Once your configuration is built, you go ahead and deploy that. The network is deployed, and the next phase in the life cycle would be monitoring your network. Something goes wrong, you'll go to the fault, and then let's say I'm a network admin, and I want to generate a report for my boss or someone up in the hierarchy, I'll go to the reporting, generate a report. Maybe it could be a device running out of memory, or number of users, like high number of users. All that reporting can be done on the reporting side. So in a way, all these life cycles or all these different modes, they work together in such a way that you get a complete holistic view of your network. So I'll go into each of these life cycles in a little bit detail, but before that, let me talk about the different panes. On left hand side, what you see is called the view pane, and it basically allows you to look at your network or skin your network in 3 different ways. The first one, which is the logical view. So this is mostly applicable for your wired network, where you have the logical hierarchy of core, access, and ag. And just for example, I have a EX switches, a 4200 virtual chassis as part of my aggregation. And then bottom, it shows all my wireless network. Okay. These are all my controllers in a mobility domain, AlphaNet. And this is another domain. And then bottom is all APs. Sorry, the mouse is really tricky here. The other way to look at your network would be, from the location point of view. So, for example, you want to manage 20 sites with different buildings, floors. So you can, depending upon their physical location, you can go to a location view and create those different sites and buildings. So for example, in my setup here, I have a main campus and let's say building 1 with a floor and a closet. So you might ask a question, this is great, but why do I need to do that, correct? Why do I have to physically, I know my physical devices, why do I have to map it here in the network director? Obvious reasons would be, let's say in that particular closet or floor, you want to find the inventory, what all switches or what all controllers are residing on that floor. You want to go ahead and you have built up or you have bought a new building and you want to kind of go ahead and install the new operating system or controllers in that particular building. You can select that building and go ahead and with a single job, you can upgrade all your devices. So,
by the way, that's a request from a lot of K through 12s, because the high school and the middle school and the elementary school all have different requirements, so they want to look at it differently as well.
Now, what mechanism is used to pull the information from the switches or Wi-Fi? Is it proactive or is it like pulled through SNMP? Or?
SNMP polling every 5 minutes.
So SNMP, right?
Yes,
So
but
if
within.
I have another kind of device than Juniper, like, I'm not going to name anything, but some customers have like variety of equipment. Is it going to be recognized? Can you import or manage these devices?
Not through the network director. This is specifically for your Juniper EX and wireless products.
Okay.
What about through like STRM? Think you can.
From?
STRM?
Yes, from STRM.
Yeah, so there is a way to do that with our, we have that in correlation to.
Do you have a view that would show me where I just look like, much like Bruce, you're familiar with the WCS product from your time at Cisco, where you can look at the floor view and have your APs placed on a map and it shows your connectivity, what's going on from a floor view, so you can tell, do you have an AP down on a floor for like a knock window? Do you guys have a view built into this like that?
So right now, this is, that is part of, we have that functionality in our Ringmaster product, which is not integrated as part of 1.0 release, but that is something that we are planning aggressively to get it done by end of this year.
You're talking the RF side of
RF planning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, to that point, is there any location, anything built in yet?
Pardon me?
Is there any sense of location whatsoever built in yet?
Location tracking device, triangulation between APs.
So like what Blake's talking about with the floor plans and the heat maps and all of that?
It's not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
so
Not in the 1.0 release, which is plan of 2.0. And the last one is just a flat list of what all devices, controllers, switches you have in a network. So that's the device view. Moving on to the life cycle. So first one is the build, which allows you to configure your network. And let's say if you have a greenfield network, everything is kind of fresh and new. You can directly import a CSV file and get all the devices added into part of your network directory. Or in a brownfield network, you can just simply click on discover devices, and you have different options like using IP address, range of IPs, or host names. You can discover different devices. So you click here, add, gives an option, and you can suck in.
Can you use wildcards? Like we can just start off with like the beginning of an IP address or beginning of a host name, like an asterisk to look for everything after that.
No, you have to specifically specify the range. So here, if you go to the range, it gives you option like from this to this,
You put a subnet in there.
and you could just put a subnet.
Okay.
I do think that the wildcards would be nice though, because that's one of the features that I use right now in a competitor's product that was very beneficial to me in a recent deployment, was being able to say that I knew all my controllers were IP address .10, but they started off in various other subnets. So just be able to say ***10.** and doing stuff like that was nice to be able to find those devices quickly and easily. Can you do discoveries with different like SNMP community strings tied to different IP ranges then as
Yes,
well? So
yes.
if your switches are one, your controllers are another SNMP string, you can do that?
Yes. So it will give option to add multiple user credentials. So you can add those, and it will automatically detect that. So under the build, looking at the, I'm like right now, here in the view pane, I'm specifically looking at the object or controller alpha 200, and some of the cool stuff would be like looking at the physical inventory for your RMAs or anything. You can look at the serial numbers and all the details. You can directly SSH into the box, delete that device, reboot that device, all different stuff. You can do it from here. Then the other important component of the build mode is the profile-based template that Bruce was talking about. So the bottom, here are the different options. So we have tried to cover almost most of the L2 functionality which we have on our switches as part of this template, and we have also added almost like 60% of the ringmaster capability that you need to configure for your wireless. So specifically on wireless, on the VLAN service attribute, so details regarding like configuring SSID, what happens if user is not able to authenticate, beaconing, and all that can be part of your wireless service profile. So these are all the different configurations that you can do as part of the wireless LAN service profile. And then a good part about these profiles are you create once and you deploy as many times you want. So once you create this profile, like some of the common use case would be, say for example, VLANs, correct? VLANs are common across your controllers as well as your switches. So you define a VLAN, and let's say it's a management VLAN which is common across your entire network. So you create that management VLAN, create that profile, and then based upon the hierarchy over here, where you are, whether you want to deploy it on your entire network, specific floor, specific switch, or specific port, you can select and go ahead and deploy that profile. So that's the beauty of creating profiles. And again, going back to the example where you want to deploy a new building, if you already have the configuration, that will be pulled out and stored here as the profile. So you take that profile, so you already have the existing config from your old buildings, you get that profile and you deploy it to your new buildings. It makes it a lot more easy. The other common options are your AAA, authentication, authorization, class of service, and filtering. All that can be done right from here.
Not to take away anything you're going to do, but security, rogue detection, interference, is any of that?
So it shows as a part of the monitoring, RF interference and all that.
Can you show that just a little
Sure.
bit?
So I'll quickly talk about deploy and then we'll talk to the monitoring.
Okay.
Okay?
I mean, it's something you're going to get to?
Yes, so I'll cover all the life cycle. So a little bit on the monitoring, on the deploy. So let's assume that we made all those changes, created profiles, we have it. It won't get pushed to the device till we go and say, do you want to deploy it right away? Obviously, you want to schedule a maintenance time and deploy it later on. So it will have an option to schedule deploy. So the options right top here, deploying right away, deploy later. It will allow you to look at the changes, what changes are going to be deployed. So you can look at the pending config changes and then decide what actions you really need to take. Then other cool feature that I was talking about is managing your images. So here with the single job, you click the deploy image to devices, and then let's say right now I'm on that controller, so it shows me selected device 1. But if I go back up in my hierarchy, so it says selected devices 17. So now, right now, I'm at top of my hierarchy at my network. I'm selecting my wired and wireless, all the devices within my network. And it says now I have 17 devices, and it will guide me through, what do you want to do. So I'll go ahead, select the images, and with the single job, it will push the respective images to my controllers as well as my switches.
Where is it getting the images from? Is that something that you need to manually upload? I see the managed image repository.
Yes, so first you get the images stored.
Does it tie into, Juniper.com where you can just pull down the latest code automatically, or is that a manual process where I need to go get it, put it on a server, and then link it into here?
You need to get it from Juniper.net, and then manually you need to upload here first. So let's say if it's a common image, correct? So you get it, you say manage image repository and say add. So it will ask you, it's local to your device or your laptop. You says browse that image and say upload. Another interesting feature is about config backup and restore, which is also part of the deploy. So now moving on to the monitor phase. So once you're deployed, you're looking at your network. We have selected, you can go ahead and select what different monitor windows you can look at into. So you have flexibility to look at different types of status. So these are all the available options you can select and look at on the main window. So right now it's showing me top sessions by MAC address, active alarms, devices in my network, and the port status.
If you click on any of those graphics or like the Mac, can I drill down on those, or do I have to go somewhere else?
You can just expand here.
No, can you double click
Like,
on
can
one
I
of- one
click
of-
on, say,
one Mac
Roslyn
address?
T400 and get more information, or?
It shows, if you rover mouse here, it will give you details.
No, can you click twice?
Doesn't do anything. That was all Flash-based graphics. Is Java? I mean, what? Security is a big deal. So what's powering the back end on this web data here?
It's all HTML5, so it's not Flash-based.
Thank you. You're the first person that's answered that correctly.
He'll show you it run on an iPad here in a little bit, or a few minutes.
So it is.
So
That's what you were getting at?
Yes.
Yeah.
and the screen that you pulled up there, you were showing a list of usernames in that there too. Is that pulling that from one of the authentication servers that Juniper has?
The,
Radius server?
the usernames, the
Yeah.
wireless usernames.
Yeah.
These are the.
So today there's the view that we're getting here. This is information that we're extracting out of the VLCs and the EX switches. So this is the devices that they're doing the DAL1X authentication.
Associated to an X part of those? No.
Yes,
That
so
pulls
we're
it
getting
from the O2 and X.
so we're getting username out of the edge devices. Integration with the policy backend is not present today, but it's something that.
Cool.
And before I forget, this is just the iPad preview. You can look at the monitoring applications on the iPad as well.
You don't get quite the fancy view, but you get everything you need.
You're the only person that's given us this so far with the actual view on the iPad that's beneficial.
On the deploy, just going back a bit, deploy, so you talk about images, but can you also deploy configurations? That's where you deploy?
The configurations as part of the profiles. So that's where you create the configs, or if you already have the configs done on that particular switch and you discover that switch, what will happen is that configuration will come under as part of one of the profile.
Can you fall back on the configuration? Like, do you keep archives on previous configuration? Let's say I make a mistake, I want to return to a previous one. Is that possible?
I know Bruce said we never do that.
I know rollback on firmware is there. How about on configuration? I make a configuration change and I commit it and there's a problem. Can I roll back to the early config? Is it stored as a config file?
So you just go back and, so configurations are part of the profiles, correct? So let's say your VLAN configuration. So these are my different VLANs and the respective configs. So if you think that you made an error with, let's say, this VLAN DMZ6, this was, you don't want it to push that DMZ6, but you went ahead and pushed that. You can go ahead and push back the DMZ5, which is the correct one. So they all store here as a part of profiles.
So that DM5 is the earlier version of your DMZ6?
Yes.
So there you go.
Is there any kind of protection in pushing these configs? So let's just say I'm tired, I'm not paying attention, and I push a config that locks me out, and I lose communication between network director and the device I just pushed the config. Is there like a backout timer where it says, okay, I've lost config, roll back if I can't communicate within that time frame? Or do I have to now manually go to my device that I just broke my communications with?
So basically you're trying to communicate, you're messing up with your management network as part of your config.
Yeah.
That's what.
But for whatever reason, I did it.
Sure, sure.
It's not my best day, I'm sorry.
Is this a real story?
I know a guy. Actually, he's Australian.
So one of the options for that would be, you also have option to either console or SSH, and if you, that's your best bet to get into console into device.
Okay.
Will it support third vendor, other wireless LAN vendors in future? Because this is just Juniper based, but is there any future plans for third vendors?
So today, this is just Juniper product. It's certainly an area of discussion. I don't think we're not at a point where we share any of our plans around
There's
that.
nothing in the design that limits that typically. Like it's all open interfaces.
Question for you now. As you get ready to roll this out, I know some of the other, vendors' products, sometimes there's a big disparity between this view, the GUI of the controller, some things that you have to do on the command line. How would you describe your, call it feature parity or whatever from one interface to the other? Are there things that you have to go to the controller to do that aren't here, or have to go to the command line to do that aren't in the GUI of either the controller or the management system?
So that goes back to a feature parity question rather than the differences between the CLI or the differences between the GUI versus CLI. So for example, again, either a VLAN or wireless LAN service, if I'm able to configure that particular or the radio profile, if I'm able to configure any of these features through the GUI itself, it would be exactly same as what you would do in the CLI. So what internally does is, once you create that, it will generate the respective CLI commands and it will push that CLI to the device.
Right, I understand that, but what I'm saying is how much of the CLI command set is missing from this?
So one of the, sorry, not to jump in.
Go ahead.
So Network Director inherits a lot of its WLC stuff from Ringmaster, and one of Ringmaster's design goals from the very beginning was full feature parity between CLI and what Ringmaster can do. So the config engine from Ringmaster, if you will, is what's carried forward into Network Director. So there is, outside of sort of debug level things, there's everything you can configure on the CLI is configurable via Network Director. What we've done with Network Director is abstracted sort of some of the most common workflows through configuration sort of into tasks. So there's wizards that will walk you through the common things. But if you need to get into, say, some of the less common features, there's sort of profile panes that will drop you in to make those config settings there as well.
Thank you.
Question here. Let's say I have a bad habit and I go in directly in the controller, make a change. How fast is it going to sync with Network Director? Like, is it syncing every hour?
No, it's a real-time syncing. So once you make a change, it will right away shown over here.
I make a change in the controller.
Yes.
It's going to sync automatically?
Yes.
Oh, so you don't have to do an audit or anything like that?
No.
It's a little different from Ringmaster in that point of view. You're not doing a deploy. Once you make the change and push it, this will do it when you do it.
How many devices is this platform currently supporting? Because I mean, you're moving through these screens and it's really nice and smooth. I mean, it's
Right now, it has 17 total physical devices,
okay.
and then probably close to 100 APs.
So 17 devices, you're talking controller switches?
Controller and switches, and then around 100 APs.
So, I mean, does it slow down, to George's question, or George's point, does it slow down as you get hundreds and thousands of devices and you run reports and, when does it start to lag to the point where it's
So the lag is not really because of the number of devices as such, but as you could see, all these devices are located across, our building 6, probably a couple of miles from here. So, and I'm managing from here. The lag would come in picture where the device capacity, let's say you're using a platform that supports 3,000 devices. If you go beyond that, then you'll see the lag and performance going down.
or if I run a report on client activity for a year over 3,000 devices, I mean, should I go to lunch and come back in 2 hours, or?
Not really, no.
Now, is there any plans for like an app? Everything's becoming app-like, and I know other vendors that have a, large mobile solution are looking at apps instead of having to IP into something. Rather just launch an app. Is there any plans for an app?
So just to field that, I think the iOS view that we just showed earlier, I think is kind of as the sort of the field view into this data. It's not delivered as an app today. It's delivered just as again as HTML5 content, with a sort of a customized set of views into this data that that's going to be relevant as you're sort of on the ground troubleshooting something. So it's not all of this data. It's just sort of subsets of it that are relevant.
You don't need an app if you have it working in the browser. You can
That's kind of the
forego
idea.
having to deal with Apple and their user interface. If it can just go through the web.
Yeah, this is just like a standard Web 2.0 interface. You fire it up, no need to download client, and I mean I can same interface I can look at from my iPad as well.
I'm thinking about taking it to the next level where you don't have to actually be on the network. I'm here in San Jose and I'm having a problem back at the office.
There's this technology called VPN. I think they sell a product too for that.
It becomes extra complicated.
No, I know what you mean though, Josh.
So just quickly looking at the alarm. So you can expand any of the alarm window. You can put the nodes to particular alarm. You can assign it to someone in your help desk. You can take a lot of different actions on the alarms. So all that options are there on the top. And then you have different views like alarms by categories, severity, state, and all that.
Can you get into an alarm and see what the syntax is for the alarm itself? Like, if blank, then do whatever response. So what triggered that?
So that alarm is like this is.
Well, those are your internal cooling fan, but you have alarm for the RF side. If SNR was less than blank, then trigger an alarm.
And can that be adjusted?
And yeah, do you have little nerd knobs in there to adjust those?
So we do. So what these particular events, these are all S&P traps that we're grabbing and correlating. Similar to again features that are carried over from the Ringmaster legacy. There is a whole bunch of thresholding things based on data that we pull. So things like SNR information. If we fall out of configured ranges, that will generate an alarm. Those things are carried forward here as well. So some of this data is driven from the network devices themselves. Other stuff is based on pulled data. There's a couple sources of information that we use to generate this stuff.
So, can you configure one right now? An alarm? Or do you have to go to the device? Is that?
But these are pulled from the devices, correct?
Yeah, that'd be a device thing.
No.
So in the interest of time, I'll quickly show the reporting. So reporting, the last thing, you can generate report based on the alarm severity, top users, device inventory. All the different actions. And let's say you have option to email, PDF, CVS, and all that. So
With that, I think we're gonna wrap
Yep.
up with the demo.
Yep, we need to move on. We've got about 45 minutes left.
So I will say, I hope this was interesting. There's obviously a lot more we could have covered here, just with time constraints. I'll certainly invite you all to interrupt. We're gonna have it demoed there as well. And of course, when it's released, you'll be able to get access to it as well. While the demo was going on, and thanks Rajesh for the great demo. While it was going on, I got to follow some of the tweets. I did want to just, while we're transitioning to Tim's session, reiterate a couple of things. So there seemed to be a common thread about the feature parity, feature velocity for Network Director. So I just want to reiterate, yes, this is a phased release. So the first release, which is actually, as Jonathan mentioned, at the end of next month, won't have all of the features that our Ringmaster has, which is pretty feature rich. The location awareness seems to be a common thread that people were making note of. So obviously we have all those features still in Ringmaster, so from our customer's perspective, those features are there and available, and those will come to Network Directors. So it's just a matter of balancing what we could get into the first release. And don't forget, this is we focused here on more on the wireless, but this is fully replacing the management app that we had for our Ethernet switches as well.
Do you have a transition roadmap that kind of loosely outlines what you're shooting for feature parity first versus second? I know it's always one of these, but,
Yes.
okay. Okay.
It, however, is not part of what we had
No,
Yeah.
that's fine.
showing
We
up
actually
here today.
So I think actually we covered quite a bit, and the first slide that Bruce went on covered, so there was a lot of it there, but more details than that, we'll wait till after the first release to share more.
I do have to say, I'm a little surprised that, the location stuff, anything visual, wireless has gotten to be so visual that it's a given, so to not have it, it's a little bit surprising that that wouldn't have been higher on the priority list than even switching stuff, just to me, I mean, like I say, it's so,
You
to
know,
put something out there that's wireless and not give you the ability to have a heat map or a floor plan
Sure.
or something,
so as you
it's a
know,
little
it's,
surprising.
you know, there's always trade-offs,
Sure.
and you make a valid point. You know, there are certain things that if we had pulled into the first release, not only would we have sacrificed a few other features, it probably would have delayed it somewhat. So timing is an issue. We know it's important for our customers to get this next generation
Well,
management
it's easy
app out
for me
there.
to say. I don't
Yeah,
have to do
sure.
it.
But on that point, so I realize it may be less interesting from the perspective of our discussion, but you mentioned versus switching. This first release actually fully replaces the Ethernet design app. So, you know, there was a balancing act there, but our answer is we're happy at least that the features you consider important we do have in Ringmaster, and it's just a question of how fast we can get them in the next few months into the new Juno Space Network Director.
After all, it's just software, right, Lee?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right.
And